Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Ready to unlock some storytelling secrets?
Ooh, I like secrets.
Well, today's deep dive
Yeah?
is all about narratives, what makes them so powerful,
Right.
how we can weave magic with our own words.
I'm ready.
So we've got,
What are we looking at today?
we've got excerpts from a storytelling guidebook,
Oh, cool.
personal anecdotes,
Right.
family tales, even a coal miner's story.
Oh, wow.
I think that one's going to send shivers down your spine.
Okay, I'm ready for that.
Where do we even begin?
Well, think of this deep dive as a journey,
I agree.
We're going to explore how stories work
Mm-hmm.
in different contexts.
Yeah.
By the end, you'll have some tools
Okay.
to make your storytelling better.
More captivating, more effective.
Yeah, exactly.
The guidebook starts by talking about oral narratives. It sounds like a fancy way of saying spoken stories, right?
Yeah, I think most people, when they think about stories, they just think about
Right.
written stories. They don't think about the difference.
Yeah.
But oral narratives,
Mm-hmm.
those are stories that live and breathe.
Okay.
They're fueled by the speaker's voice, their gestures.
Mm-hmm.
It's a back and forth
Yeah.
between the storyteller
Right.
and the audience.
Okay, so it's not just about the words on the page.
Right.
It's that whole performance aspect.
The energy they bring to the table.
And the guidebook uses this really cool example.
Okay.
A family's pink salad recipe
Oh, fun.
to illustrate that.
Yeah, that's interesting because that shows how stories,
Mm.
even simple stories
Yeah,
about food,
right.
can really shape identity and connections.
Like you're either in on the secret
Right. You're in or you're out.
or you're not.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, the guidebook introduces this idea of a storytelling triangle,
Okay.
connecting the storyteller, the
Uh.
story itself,
Yeah.
and the audience.
So we like
What's the significance of that?
So that triangle is really at the heart of oral storytelling.
Mm.
It basically means that
Yeah.
stories are constantly adapting
Okay.
based on the relationship between those 3 points.
So the storyteller's got to be aware of the audience.
Yeah, they got to be reading the room,
Right.
They got to be like a jazz musician
Oh, interesting.
riffing off the energy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So it's very different from writing where, you just
Right.
put the words down and that's
Yeah,
it.
that's static.
This is very dynamic.
Yeah.
A live interactive art form.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Like that quote from Bill Leff in the guidebook.
Oh, yeah?
He was talking about how he changes his buffalo tipping story
Oh, that's a good one.
based on how the audience is reacting.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've established stories are alive, they breathe,
Yeah.
but why do they matter so much?
Yeah. Why are they so powerful?
The guidebook dives into that with this really touching story, Hands,
Okay.
about the author's grandfather.
So Hands is a great example
Yeah.
of how stories preserve memories and help us deal with loss.
Right.
It shows how in oral storytelling, every word counts.
Yeah.
Every image is impactful.
It sticks with you.
Yeah. And then they contrast that with
Yeah.
epic storytelling like Beowulf,
Mm.
where the repetition and imagery
Mm.
were really important for people to remember.
Obviously before widespread literacy.
Exactly.
Oh, right.
You had to remember it somehow.
Now the guidebook shifts gears
Okay.
and talks about connecting with your story.
Hmm.
It seems to suggest that
Yeah.
even for personal anecdotes, you need to do some research.
Oh, interesting.
Why would you need to research your own life?
Well, even our personal experiences are shaped by things outside of us.
Oh, okay.
Research helps us understand better,
Okay.
add some depth, some nuance.
Like adding spices to a recipe.
Yeah, like that pink salad.
Okay.
Add a little bit of historical context,
Mm-hmm.
a sprinkle of cultural understanding.
It's about looking at things from different angles.
So research is like adding those extra layers.
Yeah. Those textures
Yeah.
to our stories.
And speaking of textures,
yeah.
the guidebook breaks down all these different types of stories.
It's okay.
We've got personal narratives,
Right.
family stories, ghost stories, folk tales, myths.
It's a whole buffet.
Yeah, it's a whole smorgasbord.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is how these genres
Oh, yeah.
blend together.
That's
Like a
both.
personal anecdote
Right.
can morph into a family legend,
Absolutely.
or a tall tale might have roots in reality.
It's all connected, you know?
Yeah, it gets all blurry.
Yeah.
The guidebook uses this example
Oh, cool.
about an Appalachian trickster
Okay.
named George Buchanan.
Oh, I love trickster tales.
Right.
Yeah, they're so fun.
And that story highlights how cultural context
Yes,
shapes a story.
absolutely.
So for the author,
Mm-hmm.
she's an Appalachian woman,
Right.
that story really resonated.
Yeah.
It connected her to her heritage. So personal and cultural connections really make a story come alive.
Now, the guidebook moves on to connecting with your audience,
Okay.
which seems to suggest it's not just about the story itself.
Right.
It's about who you're sharing it with.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
There are 4 key contexts to keep in mind.
All right, break it down for me.
Okay. So we've got physical, social, intellectual, and emotional.
Okay, let's unpack those.
Yeah.
Starting with physical and social,
Okay.
how do those come into play during storytelling?
Well, think about family storytelling.
Okay.
The setting,
Yeah.
the dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
all of that influences how the story is shared and received.
Right, like whose version of the story gets told?
Exactly.
Who gets to interrupt?
Yeah. Who has the authority?
The power dynamic.
Right. All of that plays a part.
It's like the same story could be a completely different experience
Totally.
based on who's telling it and where.
Absolutely.
The guidebook also mentions how family stories are often co-constructed, with everyone adding their own little detail.
It reflects the family's shared history, their memories.
Yeah.
It becomes this act of remembering together.
Shaping the family narrative.
Right.
And what about that intellectual context?
Yeah.
The guidebook talks about tailoring language and complexity to your audience,
Uh-huh.
but it's not about dumbing things down, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
It's about meeting them where they are,
Right.
understanding their background,
Mm-hmm.
using language that resonates with them.
So it's about being respectful
Yes.
of your audience.
And understanding.
And then this is especially important when you're telling stories to children.
Absolutely.
Kids can spot a fake story
Oh, they know.
a mile away.
They can smell it.
Yeah.
They want the real deal.
The guidebook emphasizes the power of connecting
Yes.
to those universal experiences, even if the details are unique.
Right, because even though our experiences are individual,
Right.
we share common threads,
Mhm.
Joy, sorrow, hope, fear,
Mhm.
and a good storyteller can tap into that.
Make it resonate.
Make it universal.
Like that storytelling journal exercise in the guidebook.
Oh, yeah.
Taking 3 random events from your week,
Right, just 3 ordinary things.
finding the universal threads within them.
I love that exercise.
Right.
So fun.
It sounds like a really fun way
Yeah.
to flex those storytelling muscles.
Yeah, and just to start thinking about
Mhm.
how you can find those universal themes in anything.
All right, so we've talked about connecting with the story,
Yeah,
connecting with the audience.
right.
Now the guidebook moves on to the next stage,
Okay.
crafting powerful stories.
I like it.
And it really dives into the techniques.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Let's unlock those secrets and learn how to turn words into magic.
I'm ready.
All right, let's dive into those techniques.
Okay.
Crafting powerful stories.
Yes.
Where does the guidebook say to start?
Visualization.
Oh, yeah.
Creating a picture in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
The more clearly you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
The easier it'll be to bring your audience into that world.
It's like you're building a movie set in your mind.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
The guidebook has this exercise
Okay.
where you engage all your senses.
Oh.
Sight, sound, smell, touch, even taste.
So you're really trying to create,
You want to immerse yourself in that world.
yeah, a full sensory experience.
Yeah, and then when you tell the story,
Mm-hmm.
the audience will feel it too.
We'll be right there with you.
Exactly.
The guidebook uses that excerpt from The Sand Try
Oh, yeah.
to illustrate this.
That's a great example.
The woman and the fairy trying to steal her kettle.
Yes, and those sensory details,
Mm-hmm.
like the salty air, the firelight,
Yeah.
it instantly puts you in that kitchen.
You can feel the tension.
Oh, yeah, you can practically feel the woman's fear.
It's a masterclass in creating a sense of place.
It really is.
I get chills every time I read that story.
Me too.
The guidebook also mentions assigning focal points
Okay.
to characters in each scene.
Yeah, so focal points are like creating a stage
Okay.
in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you imagine where each character is standing,
Right.
what they're doing.
Okay.
It helps you remember,
Mm-hmm.
and it adds that physicality.
So it's like you're choreographing the scene.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
In your mind.
okay.
And then there's open focus and closed focus.
What's that about?
So open focus is when you make eye contact
Okay.
with the audience,
Mm.
and closed focus is when you're looking inward,
Okay.
visualizing the scene.
So it's like you're drawing them in.
Yes, you're bringing them into your world.
It's like a magician
Totally.
directing our attention.
And then perspective.
Okay, yeah.
The guidebook goes into that.
Which is so important
Mm.
because who's telling the story
Right.
shapes how we understand it.
It's like we all have those lenses that we see the world through.
Exactly. We all have biases.
And the guidebook uses that example of Milbre Birch's Snow White,
Oh, yeah.
told from the stepmother's perspective.
Oh.
I love that retelling.
Right.
It completely changes the story.
The stepmother becomes a much more sympathetic character.
Yeah, you start to understand her motivations.
It makes you wonder how many untold stories are out there
Oh, tons.
if we just shift our perspective.
Absolutely.
Now the guidebook moves on to manipulating time
Oh, okay.
and focus within a story.
So here, the storyteller becomes a time traveler.
Oh, I like that.
They can speed things up, slow things down,
Okay.
really control the flow.
So they're playing with time
Exactly.
to create a certain effect.
Yeah, and the guidebook talks about scene time,
Okay.
summary time, and description time.
So scene time is like we're watching things happen.
Yes, in real time.
Summary time is like fast forward.
Exactly. You're skipping over the boring parts.
And description time is like we're pausing.
Yes.
To zoom in on a detail.
Yeah, or a character.
Okay.
So it all depends on what's important to the story.
It's like you're highlighting certain things
Yes, you're directing the audience's attention.
to what matters most.
And then, of course, creating characters.
Okay. Yeah. How do we make those characters memorable?
Well, you have to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
Their motivations,
Yeah.
their complexities.
Really get inside their heads.
Yeah, and the guidebook suggests looking at their background,
Okay.
their age, their
The
temperament.
physicality.
Yes, all of that.
And it introduces those centers of energy
Oh, yeah, from Doug Cummins.
where a character holds their tension.
Exactly. And that influences how they move, how they stand,
So it's like head, chest, stomach, hips.
even the anus.
Right.
Each center is connected to different personality traits.
So like a head-centered person.
Yeah. They might be more intellectual,
Right.
while someone ruled by their gut,
Right.
they're going to be more instinctual.
I'm picturing myself walking around,
Yeah.
trying out each center,
See how it feels?
channeling my inner superhero.
Yeah, or a wise old sage.
Right.
It's a really interesting exercise.
Yeah.
And once you understand these centers,
Mm-hmm.
you can create such interesting characters.
Give them depth.
Yeah, and make your scenes more dynamic.
So we've got these well-developed characters.
Yes.
Sense of time and place.
What's next?
What's the next ingredient
Yeah.
in our storytelling recipe?
Structure.
Okay.
Building, plot, and structure.
The guidebook says.
Yes. And the key here is that structure should serve the story,
Okay.
not the other way around.
Right. So it's not about forcing a story
No,
into a mold.
it should flow naturally.
The guidebook suggests starting with a storyboard,
Oh, I love that.
like visually mapping out the scenes.
Yeah, like comic book panels.
So you're literally drawing the story.
Yeah, you can use arrows to show the flow,
Okay.
how one scene leads to the next.
Cause and effect.
Exactly.
And then there are those classic story structures.
Like the Aristotelian structure
Okay.
and the hero's journey.
Which provides a framework
It's those familiar patterns.
that we see in stories across cultures.
Exactly like the hero setting out on a quest,
Right. Facing challenges.
coming back transformed.
So those are like those universal story patterns.
Yeah, but of course, every story is unique.
The guidebook also emphasizes the most important thing,
The MIT.
right, as a guiding principle.
Yeah. What's the core message?
What are you trying to say?
And make sure every detail supports that.
It's like you have a compass,
Exactly.
keeping you on track.
To the heart of the story.
Now let's talk about the emotional core
Okay.
of storytelling.
Yes.
Creating emotional impact.
This is where empathy comes in.
Okay.
Feeling with the characters.
Not just for them.
Exactly. You want the audience to feel what the characters are feeling.
The guidebook uses that scene from the sand tray
Oh, yeah.
where the narrator mirrors the old woman's fear.
Yes, and her determination.
You can just feel those emotions.
It's so powerful.
And the guidebook encourages us to shift perspectives.
Yes.
Let the audience experience the story.
Through different eyes.
Like those exercises where you reimagine a story.
From the villain's point of view,
Right.
it can totally change your understanding.
Okay, so we've explored all these techniques.
Yeah.
Visualizing scenes,
Uh-huh.
manipulating time, even channeling our character's energy.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. But how do we bring all this magic into everyday life?
Well, that's where the guidebook gets really interesting.
Okay.
It talks about storytelling in everyday life.
So it's not just for the stage or for writing a novel.
Right. It's about using these techniques
Mhm.
in conversations at work.
Just in our daily lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because anytime you need to convey information,
You're right.
persuade someone, connect with others,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling a story.
So how can we use storytelling, say,
Yeah.
to make a presentation about quarterly sales figures
Okay.
more engaging?
Instead of just showing numbers,
Right.
think of those numbers as characters in a story.
Okay.
What's their journey?
Oh, interesting.
What obstacles did they face? What triumphs can we celebrate?
So you're giving those numbers a narrative.
Yes, an emotional resonance.
It's like turning those sales figures
Yeah.
into the hero of an epic adventure,
Exactly.
battling against the forces of market stagnation.
And when you do that,
Yeah.
your audience becomes invested.
They're not just passively listening.
Right. They're part of the story.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And the guidebook also talks about company narratives.
Yes.
Those stories that shape a company's culture.
It's not just about telling those stories from the top down.
Okay.
It's about listening to the stories that employees are already telling.
What are their experiences?
Yeah. Their challenges, their wins.
So it's like weaving together
Yes.
all those individual threads
Into a tapestry.
that represents the company.
It's a collaborative process.
Listening is just as important as telling.
Yes.
Now, the guidebook wraps up with some performance tips.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like a toolkit.
A cheat sheet.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to bring their stories to life.
Exactly.
So let's say I'm about to tell a story to a group of 8-year-olds. What are some key things to keep in mind?
Well, kids are great listeners,
Yeah.
but they need you to be authentic
Okay.
and engaging. So start with a hook.
Something to grab their attention.
Yeah. A funny voice, a silly sound.
Create that sense of playfulness.
Yes, and keep them involved.
Hmm.
Ask questions. Invite them to make predictions.
Make it interactive.
Exactly.
So it's a collaborative adventure.
Yeah.
The guidebook also highlights the power of oral storytelling.
Especially in our digital world.
Yeah, it's like that story about Nana,
Oh, yeah.
who filled her house with handwritten notes,
Little snippets of everyday life.
family stories, words of wisdom.
And at first her family thought it was a little strange.
Right. But then after she passed away,
Yeah.
those notes became so precious.
They were like a connection to your voice.
It's a reminder that storytelling transcends time.
It connects us to the past, the present, and the future.
It's not just entertainment,
No, it's about connection, empathy.
passing on knowledge.
Yeah, and values.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, remember,
Yeah.
you are a storyteller.
Everyone is.
Every day, you shape narratives.
Through your words, your actions.
So embrace that power experiment with these techniques.
Find your voice.
And most importantly,
Yeah.
share your stories.
Because stories have the power to change the world. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.